Unfortunately, I think most of us in life have felt like we've had our power taken from us in one way or another. How often have you heard people say, I feel so powerless? I feel powerless. Bad things happen all too often. To us, to people we love, to the world, and it's very easy to feel like we don't have any power, like we've lost it. Today I can help you with one small fraction of that, but it will go a very, very long way. And I'm specifically going to focus on how to help you take some of your power back. And by that I don't mean, domineering over others, like exercising power and control over others. Not that. What I'm referring to is the power to be who you are, to be aware of what you have control of, to feel that you can be authentically yourself and ask for, perhaps even demand the respect you deserve and give that respect to others. Because truly powerful, successful, fulfilled people do not seek to take power from others. They seek to empower others. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Now, specifically, I'm going to break it down by talking about all the ways we feel like we don't have power and what contributes to that, and how to kind of grab a hold of those feelings, and kind of use them as stepping stones rather than obstacles that cause us to trip. And so before I get into my specific examples of how to help you take your power back and just be who you are, live the life that you've dreamed of, make this world a better place, I'm going to talk about the fall. And it's been a while since I have read to you. The reading to you is very, very important. And so I'm actually going to do that today too in just a minute from the dear Maya Angelou. I'm not reading my own stuff. I'm going to read Maya Angelou's stuff. But I guess before I jump into that poem, I got a little bit ahead of myself. I need to tell you why I'm recording this episode and why I wanted to speak to you about this today. Because if there's any experience that I have that I think can help you, I'm going to share it. No surprise here, this has to do with my dreams. Don't worry, there aren't any demons in this one. Well, I don't know, maybe they're manifesting in some way or another. But I had a really bad dream. And often our dreams are, they're not typically random. And I have started the practice, if I haven't shared this with you yet, I think I have, but I'm not totally sure. I record my dreams. So first thing that I get up in the morning, I write them down as best I can remember before I forget. And the more you do it, the more that you remember. Rick Rubin inspired that practice because he said, his purpose, at least one of the reasons he explained it, is because you can kind of collect them and then, go back and, after some time has passed and look at everything and kind of very clearly see what your subconscious was hinting at, and so it can help you kind of just with reflecting on the past, but you might think, okay, so how does that help me if I'm looking at something that happened in the past? I've already been through it, at this point. Well, that's true, but often, it can give you insight about where you want to go next. And so I've started recording my dreams, but in addition to, the purpose that Rick Rubin described, it helps a lot. It helps a lot with memory, and it helps you to actually just pay attention to your own mind more often in general, not just during sleep, but your waking mind. It helps you get to know yourself a little bit better. And I can tell you, since I've been recording my dreams, I like myself a lot more. And part of the reason is it's like, damn, I'm vast. And I think sometimes our dreams allow us to access parts of our brain that we wouldn't have before. And I think there's a lot of spiritual power in dreams. You can talk to psychics and spiritualists, and many of them will tell you that, when you're dreaming, you're actually in touch with the spirit plane itself. And, that's why sometimes people see deceased loved ones or communicate with them, because that veil is kind of dropped during dreams. But anyway, I could talk all day about the theory of dreams, but that's not the focus of this episode. The focus of this episode is the dream I had last night. It was a disturbing one, and there were a couple common themes that were playing throughout it, and one of them, trigger warning as this relates to sexual harassment, I was continuing to be touched in this dream in places I did not want to be touched by this brutish, hulking man who couldn't give two shits that he was upsetting me and violating me. He couldn't, and I also had the power of flight in this dream, and the reason that this man caught me is because my power of flight failed me. I was flying and I fell, and this guy got me. But I hated being touched like that. Yelling at him wasn't working, so eventually, as time passed, I kind of waited for a quiet moment to escape, and I did, and my flight power came back to me. But I had to take some time with this dream because obviously it's incredibly unsettling, And through some reflection and just kind of diving into my subconscious, it's like, oh yeah, I think this is something that I need to release. Because here's the thing, if you've read books like The Body Keeps the Score and you study psychology, you know that the subconscious is where the real work needs to be done. Meaning we often live out the beliefs that we carry in our subconscious. Something becomes a core belief and then we live that out. And unfortunately, here's a trigger warning again, I have one too many experiences with sexual harassment, starting at a very, very young age, 3rd grade, actually. And most of it was done by boys I went to school with. And unfortunately, boys in the church sometimes too. And it went on, even into my 30s. And it could be everything from just, I think I got licked a couple times, like across my face in middle school. My ass slapped repeatedly by a boy who, claimed to like me, but I just hated it. And never felt like I could speak up. And I would dread that moment every day because he would do this daily. It was like his way of saying goodbye to me. And he would say, "Go team," and hit my ass. And mind you, this isn't some broski dude. This is like a quiet emo guitar type dude who thought he was the martyr who had just fallen for me. Ugh, gross. It's hard to think about now. But the point is, I have a lot of stories that were stored in my subconscious that I then carried into worse experiences as adulthood, right? And some of those core beliefs were, my body is trash. My body is trash. It doesn't deserve respect. I must be trash too. I must not deserve respect. And I must also just accept that sexual harassment and assault is just going to be a part of my life. That was the subconscious narrative that I learned and that influenced my conscious behaviors. It was a big part of my getting into a lot of unhealthy relationships in my past because that's what I thought I deserved. I have countless stories of being touched in ways I didn't want to be touched and being afraid to speak up, and you can talk a lot about where that fear comes from. I mean, study anything, when it comes to women and girls and how throughout the years they have been made to believe that their body is not their own, that their body belongs to the media, that their body belongs to men, that their body belongs to the children that they have. Pick a story. There's a billion of them, okay? There's a billion. It's a story that never should have been told, but has been told throughout centuries, where women have been made to believe that their body is trash. And I say trash because what do you do with trash? You throw it away. You don't treat it with respect. You crumple it up. You use it as you please and toss it. That's how I felt about my body, and then therefore me, because of all the times that I was just being used, being touched in ways I didn't want to be touched. And the reason that I didn't want to speak up, again, putting aside just the countless narratives that are told of no, this is just what happens to women and girls. But the reason I didn't speak up is one that you might not expect, but I know for sure some of the women and girls listening out there are gonna get it. It was attention, right? It was negative attention, but it was attention. And that was the story I told myself when I was touched in ways I didn't want to be touched. It's well, at least they're looking at me. Well, at least they are touching me. I might feel like trash, but at least I'm desirable trash. At least they want to touch me. Attention, right? That's what we're taught to crave. We're taught, especially as women and girls, to be desirable. So part of the reason I didn't speak up, even though I hated every minute of it, is because it was oh, this is attention. This is what I'm supposed to want. Okay. So that was a subconscious program that was planted over and over again and played out in my everyday actions. And no surprise here, I lost my power. For a long time on this earth, I spent it believing that I was not worth respecting in any sense, my body or anything. And these incidences had everything to do with it. They absolutely did. And so this dream I had where this guy is touching me, and I have to tell you, like, there's nobody in my waking life, who's touching me in ways I don't want to be touched. It's not happening right now. But this program was buried. So after some thought and reflection, it's like, oh, this is something I need to release. I need to let go of this program, this belief that I will always be sexually harassed and that I deserve it, that it's inevitable. This program served me for a while. It probably helped me develop some protective instincts, but it certainly doesn't serve me now. And actually, I'm going to backtrack. I don't think that's a narrative that would ever serve anyone, just accepting, okay, I guess I'm going to be sexually harassed. I think that's a narrative that serves you when you're in survival mode, right? When you're in a situation that you can't get out of, you have to do what you have to do to survive. So I'm going to go ahead and say a narrative like that, accepting harassment and abuse is what people do to survive. It's not a narrative that actually truly serves us. It's just how we get by. And I think lots of us have stories like that. Stories that have taken our power, stories that we tell ourselves and that were told to us because we're just trying to survive. But we're not meant to just survive. And the shitty part of just the cycle of life is that we attract what we think we deserve, right? And we seek out what feels familiar. And so, if it felt familiar for me to be sexually harassed, guess what I was going to seek out? What kind of treatment? And again, you don't realize you're doing this, hence the emphasis on the subconscious. But I'm grateful for my subconscious now because it's telling me, hey, Jenna, you got to let this go. You got to let this story go. That sexual harassment is just an inevitable part of life. You got to let it go. Well, how the hell do you let something that's buried in your subconscious go? Something that has layers in your brain, that's been growing over time. That's not an easy task, but it's 100% worth doing. I'm going to share the answers that I have with you now. The world runs on stories, right? It absolutely does. Human behavior is influenced by stories, the stories we tell ourselves and the stories that are told to others. I'm going to bring up again, if you don't believe me, just watch any political candidate on TV for 30 seconds. I guarantee you a story is coming out of their mouth, even if that's just a story of something they witnessed or their version of something. What do we often talk about when we meet up with our friends or family? We tell stories, whether it's a story of the past, whether it's a cool experience that we had or a crazy experience we had, or whether we make one up just for fun around the campfire. Human beings tell stories. How often do teachers use them to make their lesson or make their point? How often do church leaders and other religious leaders use stories? I mean, most religious books are based on stories. They run everything. I think no matter how much people actually hear them every day, they forget that sometimes. Stories run everything. So we gotta grab them. We gotta get control of them, right? We gotta get control of the stories we tell ourselves. Hell, you can hear Brene Brown talk about that, right? Like, she actually uses that language as a tool when she's, experiencing conflict with her husband, where she's like, yep, we use that word or that phrase all the time in our house. The story I'm telling myself is, and it's when, there's conflict. And she's referring to when you're in an argument with your partner and you have in your head all these motivations that you think they have for the conflict, or you have in your head the whole reason for the conflict, and it might not match what's actually happening. So the story I'm telling myself language is all about kind of like acknowledging that's what's going on in our minds might not be the reality, but it's influencing how we feel. Stories influence how we feel. They influence our actions. So how do we take hold of the right ones? How do we start telling ourselves the right stories so that we can take our power back? This is the part where I'm going to read from the Dear Maya Angelou. Man, her words are immortal. Now, this is a poem that you may have heard, or at least heard of, for several, years. And it's her Still I Rise poem. I think for a while, even just the line Still I Rise was trending, but I don't know that everybody who, shared it and liked it even knew for sure where it came from, but it came from her. People had it on tattoos, t-shirts, things like that. Still I Rise became a very powerful, regularly used phrase, as it should. But I also think it's important that people know the background behind it, that people dig into the poem itself. And so I'm going to dig into this poem, this story, as kind of the opening tool for what do we do next. Now that we know the problem, now that we know the control that stories can have, what can we do? How do we fix it? How do I fix my story of that sexual harassment is just inevitable? What do I do with that after years of it being told to me by countless people and countless just cultural trends that that's just what happens? What do I do? Even now that I'm in a healthy situation and it's still surfacing, it's still in there, what do I do? So let's learn first from Maya Angelou, and then I'm going to draw on some other people who've helped me via the written word. So sit back for a moment, enjoy the breeze in the background. I leave my window open when I record for you, and I know sometimes that can result in some background noise that's distracting, but I do it because I think I want to invite the beauty of spring in with you. I firmly believe that all that's going on outside right now is very powerful. It's all about new beginnings, right? Spring, new growth, new rain, new green. Today was incredibly windy, so I do know that you might occasionally hear some stuff outside, but it's really important to invite you in, along with the breeze. So enjoy the gentle sounds of spring as I read Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides. Just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes? Shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines, diggin' in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise, up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise, into a daybreak that's wondrously clear I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. She's so phenomenal. And she wrote that in 1978. I wasn't even born yet, but doesn't it feel like it could have been written yesterday? I think so. And I don't think it's a coincidence that she ended the poem with I rise, I rise, I rise. Now, I could spend 6 more hours analyzing this whole poem with you. And if you ever want to do something like that to me, shoot me an email, because that would be an absolute delight. I would love that, and I would love to talk with you. But for now, what I'm going to say is the thing that stands out to me right now in this poem is that in order for somebody to rise, they have to know what it is to fall. And let me clarify what I mean by that. I don't think anybody deserves to be disrespected or mistreated or, told narratives that communicate that they're less than human. No, that's not the existence I believe that anybody should have. But let me take it a different direction and explain that those of us who know what it is to fall, whether that's generational trauma, whether that's abuse, whether that's harassment, whether that's job loss, whether that's a miscarriage, whether that's just being made fun of or bullied for something, those of us who know what it is to fall also have the sweet victory of knowing what it is to rise. Something interesting that she pointed out in this poem, she says, like dust I'll rise. Now you could look at dust and think, oh, that's dirty, it's forgotten. No, she looks at dust. Maybe she felt like she was left in the dust. Maybe she felt like she was treated with dirt, but she's like, hey, dirt rises. That line alone tells me that no matter what the people who mistreat you think of you, no matter what they think of you, you can twist the narrative. You can change that story to be something of power. Whatever name they call you, whatever story they've told you, you can make that your own and you can make it powerful. And if you want to know how to do that, listen to my Straw in the Oak Tree episode. It's all about the lies and stories that are told about us and how in our hands we can spin them into gold, or we can make them into something practical, or we can just let them fall dead on the ground because there's no seed. But Maya Angelou, who by the way has been through it, if you don't know anything about her life, read up on it. She's been through some shit. Not that she should be known just for that, but if there's anybody who knows how to take a shitty narrative, a shitty experience, and turn it into art, it's her. So one way that we can look at the stories that have been told to us is to twist and deconstruct the meaning. Deconstruct the meaning of dirt. Deconstruct the meaning of straw. But before I get into the details on that, I want to point out one other thing. Two other things. I lied. Two other things. She goes further on in the poem. She goes beyond dust. She doesn't just talk about dust. She goes on to say, I gotta take a second to find it, because sometimes when I talk and look, I can't find what I'm looking for. Here we go. When things get more intense, and she goes so far as to say, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Air is about the healthiest thing that all of us need, right? Oxygen, air. We all need to breathe. Maya Angelou is comparing herself to air. You can kill me, but I'm still the air. I'm still breath. I'm still the life that we all need. She's twisting the narrative. She gets to the point where it's like, yeah, no matter what you say or do to me, I rise. I am this. So now let me get a little bit more specific with some of my own examples about what I think she means here. As I said before, those who rise know what it means to fall. And if you notice in Maya Angelou's poem, she doesn't talk about just falling once. She doesn't talk about just coming over one obstacle. She talks about overcoming many. And I think that's what life is like. Again, you want to talk about that? You should listen to the discussion that I had with my husband Tom recently in the episode Dating Defeat, because we talk about how exhausting it can be to sometimes feel like you're enduring obstacle after obstacle. So in my case, with this story of I lost my power, I have to just accept that I will be seen as a sexual object. How do I undo that? Well, number one, and this applies to you too, whatever your false narrative is. So lean in, listen close to this, because we're getting to the practical tips of what to do with it. Okay? So number one, recognition. Recognizing what doesn't serve you anymore. It does not serve me to believe that I will always be sexually harassed. that impairs my ability to defend myself, and it reduces my identity to that of a sexual object, right? So I recognize that narrative of I will always be sexually harassed doesn't serve me anymore. So one of the first steps to taking back your power is to recognize it. Ask yourself, what do I still believe that isn't good for me? Write it down. And if you want to take that next step too, that I've recommended based on what I learned, from Jay Shetty, is you can write it down on a piece of paper, whatever that negative story you're telling yourself is, and then you can rip it up and throw it in the trash. That does help. But to go further beyond recognition and beyond ripping up the paper, next you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do with it now? Is this something where I want to just teach myself that, that it's not true? And the way that you do that, a recommendation that I have, is you start consciously noticing all the ways that it's not true. So like for me, for example, it's like, no, I will not always be sexually harassed because here are all the men who've treated me with respect. Here are all the women who've treated me with respect. And you consciously draw your mind to the people who have respected you. And maybe first thing in the morning, you write that down, You write down a specific situation where somebody respected you in your body, took care of you in your body. And you start noticing those things more. Because again, our brains are drawn to the negative. So we start consciously pointing our brains toward the positive, whatever the opposite of it. So for me, instead of I will always be sexually harassed, the opposite would be my body will always be cared for and respected. And then again, you draw your mind towards specific examples where that has happened and you write them down. If you want to get really powerful with it, I recommend something that I learned from Tony Robbins, where if you really want to write a new program in your brain, you need to do it when you're in a heightened emotional state or a heightened physical state. And that can be as simple as going for a run, but a really hard run, like you're really pushing your body, and over again, you recite the thing in your head that you want to believe. So like in my case, what I would want to believe is about my body is my body is treated with respect. And I command respect. My body is treated with respect and I command respect. My body is treated with respect and I command respect. And I would want to recite that to myself while in a heightened physical state. And for me, that's dancing. But maybe for you, if you don't go to the gym or you don't find yourself, working out a whole lot, go run around the block. Tony Robbins first discovered the power of this when he missed the bus when he was a young kid. He missed the bus and had to jog 13 miles to get home at 3 a.m, and that's where he discovered the power of this. So wherever you are, find a way to move, and that's a really good subconscious way to write a new program. So number 1, recognition, and I kind of combine journaling or doing the write down thing where you rip it up and throw it away. Number 2, conditioning. You want to tell yourself a new story, you tell yourself that story when your body and your mind are in a heightened physical state. And I can tell you from experience, this works. I haven't specifically done it with this sexual harassment one, but I have done this exercise with, when I go to my dance class, I recite over and over in my head the things I want to believe about myself, and I can tell you it works. I find myself more naturally believing these things, and some of the negative self-talk has slowly started to kind of taper off. So I can tell you from experience it works, and it is science-based. So if you don't believe me, you can just look up, Tony Robbins and all of his work and all of the research behind what he does, because it's been done. So recognition, you could do conditioning, but another way and this is the third one, and this is what I'm going to close with, because this is where we get really deep and purposeful with it, okay? I referenced the comedian Christina P. recently, and how she talks about how she doesn't believe in everything happens for a reason, because that's bullshit, right? How are you going to tell someone who was raped that it happened for a reason? No. But she says, but you can assign meaning and purpose to everything that's happened to you. And that's how you get through it. That's how you rise above it. And it's very clear in Maya Angelou's poem that she has assigned purpose to what she's done and what she's been through. So the third and more vast one is, if you want to take a narrative and you want to give it a bigger purpose, you really want to take your power back by taking this straw, taking this dead thing, taking this bullshit and turning it into gold and turning it into something that can serve you and humanity in a higher way, you absolutely have that ability. You 100% have that ability. And I can tell you from experience, even though I'm haunted daily by the whims of a particular narcissist, I, even in the midst of my struggle, have written books, have learned so much about how this particular illness works. And I feel very well equipped to help people now to get through this. So I do not like some of the things that have happened to me the last couple of years, but when I turn it into gold, I take this selfish, visceral destruction, and I can spin it into something that will educate other people so they can avoid it, and also so we can maybe get closer to not having narcissism be such a common thing in this country. So my higher purpose with the crappy stories that were said about me is to write about them and use them to help educate other people and lead us all to a better place. Circling back to the sexual assault piece, I wrote a whole novel about, it was a realistic fiction novel, but based on some of my real experiences with assault, about what a young woman went through after being assaulted and the justice system and how it served her in some ways but didn't serve her in other ways when she reported the crime. That's kind of what my novel Sheltered is about. So you should definitely head over to my website, www.lovingcreatively.com, and check that one out. But I assigned a higher meaning to it. And that higher meaning was, I'm going to take this experience, write it down, highlight some of the injustices. So hopefully people will be more educated about these injustices and want to move toward helping to make it better. But I'm also going to write it down because here's the thing. When you own your story and you write it down and you think about it, you can also see it from a perspective of what really happened. And in my case, after writing stories about what happened to me and thinking about them, it's like, oh no, I never deserved any of that treatment. And I feel a lot better about my body now too, and I respect it. They are the ones who did that. They are the ones who are so sick and messed up that they did that to me. And so whatever your version of writing a story down or sharing it or making meaning out of it is, if you're ready to do that and you want to do that, you should. Maybe for you, that's a conversation with a therapist. Maybe for you, you're a comedian and you want to draw on some of your pain to make some kind of special highlighting how ridiculous some of the treatment that you've received it, how ridiculous it is that people have taken your power. You know, a prime example of that, even Ali Wong, she did it as a comedian. She highlighted how often, and I'm going to get pretty explicit here, but I think you can handle it. In one of her specials, she highlighted how ridiculously uneven oral sex was growing up. And she literally did this whole joke about this teenager demanding to be eaten out and kind of shoving her vagina in someone's face. But honestly, that's kind of what it is a lot for young women with blowjobs, and disproportionately for a long time, oral sex was disproportionate. So again, sexual power being taken away and manipulated, Ali Wong found a comedic way to highlight that problem. So all of this is to say that if you want to take that third step and you want to assign a higher purpose to the ways that your power has been taken and the false narratives that have been told about you, you have that freedom. And the way to figure out what the right thing is for you, the best way to do that for you, is to, again, no surprise here, just get quiet for a minute, Ask yourself, what can I do? How can I use this to serve myself and others? How can I take this crappy, horrible thing, this false narrative, this false unconscious belief, and turn it into something that has a higher purpose? So this has a lot of layers. This is a lot of stuff, because we're working with the subconscious here, right? And so it's gonna take a lot of digging, and it's gonna take a lot of, steps, and there's lots of ways that you can work with it. But the thing that I want to close with is that I don't want you to get frustrated if it takes time. And to help emphasize that point, I'm going to quote one of my favorite guys. You hear about him a lot, Ed Milet. I recently ordered his Max Out book, Max Out Your Life, and he wrote something really interesting in here. So I'm going to leave you with this. Sometimes you'll take a couple of steps forward, get a little success, and then you face an obstacle that pulls you back. However, it's not all bad. You will never be back to square one because each experience is progress if you've learned a lesson. If you genuinely understand how to achieve real success, you recognize that obstacles and setbacks are necessary. They strengthen and test you. They prepare you for anything and everything life will continue to throw at you. When you're experiencing the setback, take it as an encouraging sign and keep pushing through. Still I rise. Some of the most successful people in the world know that progress, taking our power back, rising above the false narratives that are told about us, it's not something you just do once and then you're fine. It can take days, months, a lifetime to rise above these narratives. But the beautiful thing is that along the way, like Ed Milet said, if you treat each setback as a lesson, you can assign your own meaning to it and find your own victory in that day and see new pathways that will open up for you. When you look at a perceived setback as an opportunity to learn something, it doesn't seem so debilitating. It's hard to retrain the subconscious. It's hard to take our power back. But the way that we do it is by recognizing the ways that it has been taken, recognizing subconscious programs that we have that don't belong to us, and recognizing that we have the power to assign our own meaning and purpose to perceived setbacks and all the ways that people have disrespected us. And I would like to believe, and I think it does because I can see it in my own life, the more that we do this, the more that we learn this still I rise mentality, the more that we learn to recognize the beliefs and programs that don't serve us and start actively working to insert new ones, the more that we do this, the more powerful we become. Watch plants grow if you don't believe me. Each day they get sturdier and more deeply rooted to the earth until they're as tall as a freaking oak tree. Whatever the false narrative is that took your power away, you always have the power to take it back. And it starts with recognition. And then it goes on with, what do you want to believe about yourself? Because you can believe that. No matter what disrespect has been done to you, you can believe that, and you can pursue the life that you deserve. And take some time to read a book, There's lots of inspirational people out there. Maya Angelou, Brene Brown, Ed Milet, Tony Robbins, all these people, Jay Shetty, they'll help you. They have a lot of wisdom. Even Christina P., I heard her saying, more people should read. She doesn't understand why people don't read so much anymore. There's so much wisdom to be found in books. And of course, as a former English teacher, I attest to that. But also just as a human who reads, I can attest to that. So read a book, or listen to a podcast, listen to the wisdom. Just like you listen to this today, there's a lot of inspirational folks out there. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. I'm happy to share my journey with you if it helps you to feel encouraged to take some of your power back. But for now, I'm just going to leave you with a thank you for coming.